My name is Anthony Bailey-Grice. I am, my name isn't on the screen, called LMPG today, but my name is Anthony Bailey-Grice. If you don't know me, I'm the MD of LMPG. I'm joined as ever by my glamorous assistant, Laura, who does all the work, and I take all the credit. Laura, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone.
And what will you be doing tonight, Laura?
I will be letting people in and manning the chat.
Manning the chat, nice. As well as our good friends over at Hammock, which is a bit of a I don't want to say undiscovered gem because quite a few members now know about it, but we've been working with these guys for a long time. It's a little bit outside the standard LMPG wheelhouse, but all of the members that I know of that are using it, and there tends to be quite a few these days, have got nothing but good stuff to say about these guys. And they're going to be taking us through the, I guess, ever-changing landscape of what will become making tax digital. Now, very timely webinar in this case, because as we were just talking before we let everyone in, spring statement came out today. There's more changes and kind of last minute updates that we've had to make to these presentations. So I'm sure we've got a lot of questions about that. We will be going through some of that as well as kind of what's been coming up and over the horizon for the last few years. Since the first I started speaking to Hammock, they've been talking about making tax digital. And it's always been one of those things that kind of is a little bit far off in the horizon. You think, oh yeah, we need to get sorted out for that. Well, actually now it's starting to breathe down our necks a little bit as it approaches in April of next year. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce James Kilpatrick, whose job title I don't know. What is it, James?
Yeah, I'm the head of business development.
Head of business development. You did tell me that recently as well. I think you've had a big promotion or something, haven't you?
No, I mean, it's just a fancy way of saying head of sales, really. But yeah.
Oh, fine. Rami, there is sound. You can't hear me say this. Laura, can you respond to Rami? I'm assuming everyone else can hear me. Alistair, I can see you. Can you stick your thumb up? Yeah, brilliant. And Marco Ferrari, who is head of marketing, director of marketing, something like that, who will also be joining us tonight as well.
Hey, hi guys.
Did I get the title right, Marco?
I'm one of the co-founders, so it's most letters don't matter.
Fine. Basically anything. General Dog's Body is Marco Ferrari, but I don't know. I thought it was more the marketing route as well as one of the co-founders.
We all wear a few hats, so yeah.
Right. Lovely. Makes sense. Makes sense. James, do you want to kick us off then?
Well, actually, it's going to be Marco kicking off this time. So he's going to take you through the introduction and the information about making tax digital, and then I will show you how that's going to be solved in the product. So Marco.
I'll shut up for a bit unless there's some questions that come in.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Just give me a second so I make sure that I can share the right screen with you. Can you all see this?
All good, mate. Thank you.
Fantastic. Quick caveat before we jump into this. There's nothing as exciting as tax to discuss, so I'm sure everyone is thrilled. Before we jump into this, a quick caveat about this meeting being recorded. Please feel free to watch it and rewatch it as many times as you want. To Anthony's point, though, we are in an evolving landscape, and there are new rules and regulations and updates that are coming in at all times. So if you happen to watch this in the future, or if you are living in the future, hello, and you are watching this, and there's something that doesn't add up, please do get in touch and ask the question, because most likely something new has happened in the meantime, and so we will have some further updates, if that makes sense.
It's a great point, Marco. Thank you.
Apart from that, let's get started. To Anthony's point, our proposition is a little bit different than most LMPG suppliers, in that we have just a fully digital product, which, since tonight we're talking about making tax digital, probably is in the right position. And the way we operate is through direct access to our services that are plug and play. So feel free also to have a look at our website as I talk about things, and then chip in with any questions. Okay, so here we go. First of all, what is this making tax digital for IT or for income tax? This is a new tax regime that will replace completely the existing self-assessment regime for anyone who qualifies. Okay, this is a point that it's a good starting point, because you will see as we go through the details that you will find there's a new schedule for submissions. There are different ways of managing things. For anyone who's enrolled into Making Tax Digital, this will be the one and only way to manage what today is your self-assessment. Okay. The label wasn't chosen by chance. Making Tax Digital has the first requirement is to make all records digital, and it applies to landlords and sole traders and anyone who's got revenue streams that are compatible with self-assessment. We will get into that into a moment. If you have any questions about what's Making Tax Digital in general, please feel free to feed them through the chat, and we'll get back to it. Was it me doing this? Okay. Who needs to comply? Anthony was saying, just today, there's been a piece of news in the spring statement about the new threshold being announced for April 28th. But let's go in order. So we have a descending threshold for enrollment that starts with 50K from April 26. April 26, it may sound that it is quite far away into the future. In fiscal year terms, it is literally the next one. We are almost 1 year to go now. It is kind of fast approaching in accounting terms. The people who will be captured into this are all landlords and sole traders with a total turnover, not profit, this is income, yeah, from £50,000 per year onwards. The important thing to memorize here is that what matters here is the combined income. So if you go properties only, you go to total 50K for properties. If you are a sole trader and a landlord, whatever you're making from the two businesses, you sum it up. And if you are over the threshold, then you will have to be enrolled. The threshold then goes down to 30K in April 27. As I was saying, as of today, we have confirmation that from April 28, it will be 20K. So in reality, is how early you decide to move depends on you and on the threshold you're on. This is coming one way or another. So what we do recommend is to start making moves a little bit earlier, just so you save yourself a lot of stress and headaches down the road. How will MTD work? So what are the main requirements that are coming in with MTD? First of all, when we say digital records, we mean that the records will have to be submitted through MTD compliance software. What is MTD compliance software? It is a software that goes through the whole process of vetting and of integration directly with HMRC. As we speak, there's a grand total of 12 software providers that have been approved by HMRC to date. This is published on the internet, by the way. We'll share the link later. It's a gov.uk link, it's not ours. Hammock is the first and to date only landlord solution to be recognized by HMRC as it stands. So the first requirement is digital records and submissions through an approved software. The big one is the one that's coming now, quarterly updates. This is probably the biggest change, the one where we have the strongest impact on your day-to-day, because what MTD does, it moves from one tax filing a year on the 31st of January to 5, essentially, filings a year. 1 per quarter. We'll go through the schedule in a second. And the final declaration, which is still due by the 31st of Jan. And this final declaration is what replaces the existing self-assessment tax filing. So pretty much 12 months from now, this is what's going to happen. You move from the 31st of Jan to 4 filings per quarter, 1 filing per quarter, so 4 filings in total plus the one on the 31st of January. Here is the breakdown. If you look at the box on the left-hand side of the screen, the exact date we've been told will be the 7th, not the 5th. So for each quarter, when you go into the month after to as a deadline. So April to June, you have July to complete, and by the 7th of August, you got to file, etc., etc. It's written on the screen. These filings will have to be done through software that's being recognized by HMRC. No other alternative. With this, if you have only property or whatever your property income is, this you can submit directly from Hammock. For the final declaration, that will need to include all sources of income combined, and so that one most probably will have to be managed by your accountant through tax reduction software, or if all you have is rental income, you can file everything through Hammock. Which income streams qualify for MTD? As I was saying, it's important to remember 50K, April 26, it means all income from rental properties and or self-employed business. This is the summary of it. So rental income, including jointly owned properties, I'll add a comment on that shortly, and self-employment income combined. What is not included, and this list is short, but it is based on other presentations we made in the past, and we know that it's easy to get confused. So for your peace of mind, any payee income, so any salary that you get as an employee or pension doesn't qualify for this. Income from other investments, such as dividends or savings, doesn't qualify. And rental income from limited companies and partnerships doesn't qualify either. Sometimes we do get this question. MTD for IT, for income tax, is self-assessment. So if you run your business through a limited company, then the tax schedule is that of a limited company. It's got nothing to do with this.
Marco, can I just jump in on that last point? Because we've got two questions that I think are particularly pertinent here. The first being from Steve, which I think you've just answered, to be fair, which is it only relevant to unincorporated? So if a landlord runs the business through a limited company, this is not relevant.
No, MTD is only for self-assessment.
And another question from Gary, which says, I am pay-as-you-earn plus a landlord, not as a business. So he would be affected, but would he need to add both of those incomes together and do that through MTD? How would that work?
Did you say payee and rental income?
Yes.
No. So rental income, if he doesn't have any sole trader income as well, rental income is the one that he needs to check against the threshold. And if it is over 50K or 30 or 20, then he will have to file MTD filings for the rental property.
So the rental income on its own would need to bring in a revenue of at least 50K for the next year.
For April 26, yes.
Yeah,
and then in the final declaration, you put everything together. But there's no threshold for the final declaration. The final declaration is your full tax filing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Shall I move on?
Yes, please.
So this one is a very important point. I'm treating it separately also because there's a little bit of a little success story for Hammock. So why not? So important part. Jointly owned properties, they do qualify. Income from jointly owned properties qualifies towards MTD, but only for the individual quota of each owner. Okay, so there's a very simple example there. If someone owns 50% of a property that generates 40K, 20K is the quota that they need to consider for the threshold. Okay. The reason why there is a success story for Hammock is because until a few months ago, HMRC had excluded jointly owned properties from the pilot phase of MTD, which is the testing phase of a system which is already live, because they didn't think there was a way to submit the income with a proper split based on ownership, we do that. And so that's happening now in the pilot already. Jointly owned properties can, the income from jointly owned properties can be filed. In general, the way we operate in Hammock is that whenever you enter a property, you also set, if there are multiple owners, you enter the owners and their respective percentage of ownership, and we automatically calculate your quota of income and expenses based on that. So you find them already in your tax statement.
Sure, James is going to take us through that later on, and
Very
I'm
quickly,
aware we've
very
seen it
quickly.
before. But am I right in saying that Hammock is the only platform that does that?
To our knowledge, yes.
Yeah, and that's why HMRC probably thought it's not possible.
Yeah, they didn't consider the way we do it, because we do it at a transaction level from the very beginning. And so, you know, there are no calculations or anything else, which is we do it based on the actual ownership. So yeah, we make, for us, it's actually very straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Okay, so how to prepare for making tax digital? Obviously, this could be a much longer conversation. This is, you know, a very short condensation of tips. If you have anything else that you have doubts on, you know, tonight is a very good night to raise your voice. The first point, this is our bread and butter. We observe it every day. Going digital, which means, you know, successfully moving away if your current setup is based on some combination of some spreadsheets, plus potentially the good old, you know, shoebox or whatever other container for your paper receipts. Moving to digital as a way to operate may include a little bit of a steep learning curve. So what we recommend is, first of all, check in with your accountant. If you're doing everything yourself, then, you know, it's a slightly different conversation. But if you have an accountant or tax advisor who operates with you, do check in with them, because they are most probably scouting the market for solutions as well. And they may have some plans already that they, you know, may or may not involve you. So it's a very good thing to touch base with them. Regardless of how you touch base with your accountant, I would say pick a software and start testing it, so you get an idea. You know, even if you don't start using it 100% today, at least you will get a very good idea of what that entails and how helpful or how difficult it can be, and you're giving yourself time to get to grips with it instead of waiting until the last minute. Start now is in line with what I just said. Honestly, you know, it's just any time that you wait now is probably just gonna give you a little bit more of a headache down the road when the deadline is looming and it's closer. So, you know, I suggest you run at least, you know, a very quick test just to see how you feel about it. Second thing, the second part relates to when MTD is live. Hitting deadlines when you move from the 31st of Jan and that's it to now you have 4 deadlines over the course of the year plus a 5th one, means that in reality they will kind of come pretty quickly, one after the other. So we strongly recommend making sure that your solution has automated reminders embedded, as you may have figured. Hammock does, or at the very least check in with your accountant to make sure that you do get heads ups and if anything is not in line with the calendar, so you don't risk being late. There is the one on the right hand side is a little bit more out there. It's for the early adopters or someone who wants to be a little bit more adventurous. There is a pilot that is live, as I was saying, and as long as you qualify, you can get into it now. So you get to grips with the actual system. During the pilot, there is no penalty for any late filings on the quarterly ones, so you can use it a little bit. It is a testing phase, and it could be a very good one also to test the way you engage your accountant for all the information or the updates we need to share. As I said, this is not compulsory at all. It's just an opportunity that's there. And obviously, since this is a test phase, it means that you get better access to customer support from HMRC, resources that are a little bit more dedicated, and you give yourself time. How we can help. When we say made by landlords for landlords, there was actually a short conversation we had on the Facebook group earlier today. Hammock really is designed specifically for landlords. In a moment, James will show you what I mean on screen. However, very quickly, we mentioned it a couple of times. We are the first and to date only landlord solution that's been approved by HMRC. So the choice doesn't take a lot of time. We do tracking and categorization of rental income and any recurring expenses in real time, so you don't have to. You can submit quarterly filings straight to HMRC for all your property, for all your rental income and expenses from Hammock. We send automated reminders, notifications, and alerts, not only about tax deadlines, but even more importantly, about rent received, about any payments that are late, about anything that doesn't add up. And we can, if you so wish, support the enrollment into the pilot program as well. This is just a super quick overview to give you an idea of how easy it will be. Once you have the figures, the mechanics of submitting the figures will be super easy, just a couple of clicks. So this is one screen. As you can see, bottom right, there are the quotas listed there and a little instruction to complete them if they're not completed. And then this is what a quarterly submission would look like. So you would have all the breakdown of, not too far off what you're used to with the SA 105 form if you compile it yourself or if you check on it after the accountant has done it for you. And as I said, James will show you some of the platform live in a sec. Yeah. Before I close my screen, we offer for you guys 50% off. You can sign up directly from our website, which is usehammock.com/LMPG. This is very easy, I'd say, to remember. And also you can get in touch with us via email or phone anytime. The details here are on the screen. And for anyone who's watching the recording, you got all the time to copy them down or do whatever to do.
Thank you, Marco. That was really good, and I will say that yourself and James have employed somewhat of a Charlie's Angels approach to this webinar, because I note that while you've been talking there, James has been in the chat box answering a lot of questions already, kind of double teaming it, which is lovely. But I do want to kind of ask some of these a little bit more openly for everyone's sake here and also for the recording's sake as well. So Rob asked, do we define income here as gross rent?
Rental income, yes.
Nice quick answer.
Paul said, Anthony, just to sort of add to that. So I think probably what people are getting at is, especially if you use a letting agent, if you rent £1,000 but you pay £100 fee and you only get £900, it's still the £1,000. So your expenses do not matter here. Just add up your rental income. If that rental income for your percentage of your properties is over 50k, you will be in this next year, and then 30k, and then 20k.
Thank you. And Paul's question, which I again note, James, that you have answered, but I think that this is an interesting point, is how the quarterly timings work, particularly with regards to the fact that this is being brought in from April next year. But actually, if you're doing it quarterly, you've got one on January 31st, then you'll actually be looking retrospectively at the year prior, right?
No. So the regime starts in April next year. That is day one of your first quarter. So you start in the 6th of April, just like you were starting a new tax year, except this time, 3 months later, when you get to the 5th of July, that is the end of Q1.
Well, 7th of August to that. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
So you go 6th of April, you'll go to the 5th of July. That's the end of Q1. You will then have a period of time, which I should know off the top of my head, but I think it's either 2 months or 3 months that you have to then submit those figures that for that quarter that's just finished. And then the next quarter, you'll do the same. And the next quarter, and then it's just only at the end of the year when you'll still have until the following January to actually do your final declaration. But the beauty of this is if you're doing your quarterly filings every quarter, by the time you've done that fourth quarter, you've already got your figures. There is no waiting around like people often do now. Is they panic 6 months after April to go, God, I've got to get my tax return in. You're doing this in real time. So actually, by the time that tax year ends, you should already know all your figures. And if you are using Hammock, your accountant can have direct access to the figures as well, so that you don't even need to send them. Your accountant will just go in and take them.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier on about Gary had mentioned that he's PAYE as well as a landlord, and therefore it's only the landlord side that he needs to worry about in this aspect. So just to clarify, if the rental income in this case is under £20,000, it doesn't concern him until 2028. That's when it's going to be mandatory.
If it is under 20K at the
It's
moment,
under
unless
unless it
there's
increases
no
over
provision.
20. Let's say that it's on 19,500.
Yeah.
If it stays that way as it stands right now, doesn't have to worry about it. If it does creep over to 20,000, then
Yes.
2028 is the year. Fine.
One little thing just to add to that. So the original this MTD that's coming in next year was originally supposed to come in last year, and it got delayed because HMRC weren't quite ready. The original legislation was for 10K was the threshold across the board, so they weren't doing this like waterfall down. It was everyone above 10K. Whilst what we know as fact is it's 50K, 30K, 20K. But the truth is, the draft legislation has never changed. It still says 10K in there. So there are a lot of experts who will tell you that at some point it will come down further to 10. Now that's not been announced, and it may never happen, but just to give people some awareness that if you're on 19K, this isn't necessarily something you can never think about ever again. Keep an eye out, because it is, I would say, is reasonably likely that it will eventually come down to that level.
To be fair, if you are on 19K, when you start considering inflation or anything else, it is likely that, come 28, probably something will be up anyway. But yes, let's see. The general context is that, yes.
Great. Paul's asked, well, two questions. I've got a lot of them coming in thick and fast, so I'm going to just do these two, and then we'll jump over to James's side, and we'll figure out the rest later. But Paul Hilliard, our ops director, has mentioned two things. One, wholeheartedly recommending Hammock, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'll mention as well, because he mentioned it before we went live, James is an LMPG member and was wholeheartedly recommending LMPG to me earlier on, which is great for me to hear. But, let's say it publicly live on the webinar if we can. So I'm going to mention that as well. But the second thing that he said is actually a correction. He said, to correct you, James, if he understands it correctly, currently Q1 first return has to be returned to HMRC by the 7th of August. So that deadline, it looks like it's going to be, what's that? 2.5, 3 months?
So that would mean you get 1 month.
Yeah.
There is a period of time, and I admit I'm actually not sure.
May I just observe that I had this on screen literally 5 minutes ago. It is in our presentation.
Fine, right. Well, just
to bring it up
backwards.
Again. Yeah. So the way it works is that the quarter finishes, and then in this case, if it is April to June, then you got July, and by the 7th of August, not the 5th, you got the deadline to submit the quarterly filing.
Well, thanks for saying it now, Marco. Why don't you say it when he asked, said he didn't know the answer?
I know. The point that James was making, I think it's just important to realize that if you are thinking, well, I'm gonna wait until August before I get even started, that's exactly the problem. The idea is that you should have everything already digitally recorded, and then you just file it. The longer you wait, the more time you will have to spend to then take whatever offline sources you got and convert them into digital, and then get to the point where you can file. So, at the latest in April, you should really be live already. But don't take my word for it. Honestly, have a play around with software, see how you find it. Chances are you will find that it is better than what you're doing now.
I would agree with that, and I think it was a great point you raised earlier on that yes, it might not affect certain people until 2027, 2028, whenever it might be, but the reality is that at some point you're going to have to be using this software and using Making Tax Digital. So it's probably worth knowing what that looks like and how to use it before it's necessary, because if you get there and you mess it up at that point, it becomes a real headache. James, do you want to share your screen then? I think you're taking us. Is it live on the platform?
Yes, yes, it is. So I'm just going to share my screen now. And yeah, so this will take about 10 minutes to kind of give you all a taster of the software. This isn't going to be a super in-depth. It really is just going to give you a taster. And those who want to learn more, obviously can get in touch, or you can just sign up for our 30-day free trial and have a play. What I would say is, I know what we're talking about today is making tax digital, and we obviously are a solution for that, but we did not build Hammock for making tax digital. This is a software that has been making landlords lives easier managing their property finances for 6 or 7 years now. It just so happens that on top of that, it will get you ready for MTD. So I think even those who are in this sort of maybe in 27 or 28, I genuinely would be amazed if you didn't find this just made your life an awful lot easier, even just in your day to day. And I know some of the content that we go through, especially when it's tax, it can feel a bit scary and everything else. But I promise you, once you get on this software and you're using it, and especially if you start now, you have a whole year to learn this. And by the time this rolls in, you will be so used to it. And then all you're literally doing is once a quarter, you're just pressing a button twice. So it really does not need to be scary or difficult if you get prepared. So with that all being said, let me give you a little run through a Hammock account. So this is I'm a landlord called Mike in this example. Okay, so this is my Hammock account, and this is going to manage all of my bookkeeping and property finances. And it all starts by just adding your property. So the first thing you're going to do in Hammock is you're going to add your properties, and you would just click here. You can see I've added 3 properties in my account. By the way, I haven't added those pictures. A nice little part of Hammock is as soon as you add a property, it just pulls that picture in from Google Street View, which people seem to really enjoy. And what's going to happen is I'm going to then add my tenancies. So each of my property could have 1 tenancy. It might have multiple tenancies. And then I can start categorizing my transactions, which I'm going to show you in a second. So that it means that actually I can see, first of all, just how much money I'm making on each property, which is obviously pretty important. It will also help me keep track of any arrears. So I know, if my tenants have fallen behind, if anybody owes me money. But the really crucial part that Marco talked about in his presentation is around how do we manage joint ownership or any kind of split ownership. And the way we do that is through the use of portfolios. So think of a portfolio as an ownership structure. Now, in my case here, I've got 3 properties, but I own each of these properties in a slightly different way. So I've also got 3 portfolios. 141 Corn Street, I own 50-50 with my wife, Mary. So I've created a portfolio. You can call them what you like. I've called it joint ownership, but it says that I own 50% and Mary owns 50%. Now, the second property here, that is 100% owned by me. So that's 100% owned by Mike. Whereas this third property isn't mine at all. It's my wife, Mary's. So that is owned 100% by Mary. And it means that once we've done our bookkeeping, not only is Hammock going to tell us how each of our properties is doing, but then when we get to the MTD and the tax screen, which I'll show you shortly, you'll see how Hammock splits everything out. So the question you might be wondering, okay, where do all these numbers come from? And to answer that, I'm going to jump over to the transaction page. Because the way Hammock works is we use something called open banking. So hopefully a lot of you will be familiar with this. Essentially what this means is you can connect your bank account to our software to share a digital version of your bank statement. So there is no access to your funds, there is no access to your passwords, it is fully secure. But what it means is that once you connect your bank feed, you're going to see all of your transactions, historical transactions, coming through in a digital format. And this can go back as far as 3 years. If you want to go back that far. And all we need to do now is we need to start clicking on these transactions, categorizing them, linking them to relevant properties. And I want to show you how that works using 2 examples. Now, because I'm sure on this call, we will have landlords who collect the rent directly, and we will have landlords who use a letting agent. And obviously there is a slight difference. So I'm going to show you both. Okay, so first of all, I've got a tenant called Tom. Now, Tom pays me directly. He pays me $1,100 a month. And like most tenants, he puts his name in the payment reference. So actually, if I use the filter here, we've got all sorts of filters, but this is for keyword. So I search for the word Tom, and because Tom puts his name in the payment reference, it actually isolates all of Tom's rents. And I decided to start my bank feed from last April. So you can choose, or you can go back up to 3 years. Now, all I need to do now is I click on any one of these transactions. And when we do that, we get all of our income categories. Now, some of you might have an Airbnb, in which case you could use furnished holiday lettings. In my case, it's just a standard tenancy. So that's my rental income. We then link it to the property, 25 New Church Road, my tenant Tom, and save. And you can see just like that, that first transaction has now been categorized. But obviously I want to track all of these together. I don't have to do each one at a time. So just down here on the right-hand side, you can see it says, if you want to find and track more, you can click that search and track button. And now everything has a little tick box. So actually I can just select all of those and do a year's worth of rent payments in about 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Even better than that, because the system now knows what Tom's rent looks like, next month it's just going to categorize itself. So once you actually get all this set up, any of your regular income and expenses will just start to categorize themselves, and you'll just get notified your rent's come in, your mortgage has gone out, etc. It makes your bookkeeping extremely easy. Now, the only difference is when you get rent via a letting agent, usually that comes in net of fees. So I'm going to show you a second example where I've got a tenant called Mary. Now, Mary pays £1,200 a month, but then I've got an agent who takes a fee. So when you set up the tenancy, it will ask you, how much is the rent? 1,200. Do you use an agent? Yes. How much does your agent charge? And I've said 10%. So I'm going to use a different filter now. I'm going to use a date filter. I'm going to go back to February because I know that my agent, who's called Moving On, they paid me that net figure in February. So 1,200 rent minus their fees. Now, because I've already stated that when I set up the tenancy, when I click on the transaction, same as before, we just say that's my rental income, this time for 141 Corn Street, my tenant Mary, save. This time, however, because Hammock knows I use an agent, it automatically splits and grosses out that payment. So instead of 1,080 of rent, it's what it actually is, which is 1,200 of rent and 120 of fees. And just like Tom, next month, if my agent pays me that full amount, it's going to automatically track that and split that. And any month going forward. The only time with an agent payment you're really going to have to do anything are those 2 or 3 months a year where they might, they take some money out for a gas certificate or a repair or something like that. So let me show you an example in March. So we jump forward to March. I didn't get 1,080. So this is actually one of the few transactions which will not track itself because Hammock does just need to know a little bit of extra information. But let's say it's because I only got 867 because there was a repair. So I click on the transaction and again, rental income, property 141 Corn Street, my tenant Mary, except this time Hammock will tell me this is less than expected. And would you like to create an expense for the difference? Now, obviously, I know there was a repair, so I'm going to say yes. We then just need to pick the category of that expense. And most of the time, it will be maintenance. Within maintenance, obviously, it could be all sorts of things. But again, repairs definitely seems to be the most common. So I'm just going to put that through as repairs. And now, not only does Hammock split that out, and it knows I've got my rent and my fees, it also now knows I've got some repairs. And if I wanted to, I could add a note to that, just click and say, had to fix the boiler. I can also attach the letting agent statement, the receipt, the invoice. You can attach a receipt or invoice to any transaction that you've categorized. So hopefully you understand how the tracking works. And I say a lot of this is actually going to just automate once you've set it up. That means that where we started before, that is how you can then actually see how much money you're making on each of your properties. But then also because each property is connected to its ownership, when we go through to the tax area, which is where we're getting on to the sort of the MTD piece, this is where Hammock automatically splits everything out between me, Mike, and my wife, Mary. So we don't need a license each. We've got everything we need and we can submit for both myself and Mary from this same license. If I want to go into Mike, you can see I've actually got many years worth of past data, but let's say we just want to look at the 24-25 tax return. We come in here and this is going to give me a lovely breakdown. So at the top just gives me a summary of what's my taxable income and allowable expenses, plus anything that might be disallowable, such as your mortgage interest or any deposits or anything like that. It will then give you a little estimate on the right-hand side of what you're forecast to pay. Obviously, this is based on an estimate, and you can change your tax rate here. It's not supposed to override anything your accountant might tell you, but it will certainly give you an idea so you can start planning ahead of time. But then Hammock automatically, based on the way you've categorized your transactions, it puts everything into the boxes that you need to submit to HMRC. And whilst the version you're looking at here is our standard version, if you were a Hammock user and you sign up for the MTD pilot, or when you go into MTD for real, this is also the page where you would click that button and do that submission, which is just like how Marco showed you on those final slides of the presentation. So, honestly, once you're tracking your transactions, everything else really takes care of itself, and it is very, very simple. Just finally, if I've got 2 minutes, Hammock, yes, we'll take care of your bookkeeping. Yes, we'll take care of you for MTD, but there is a lot of other stuff in here which I just want to quickly highlight. Because you'll all know there's loads of compliance stuff that you need to remember outside of tax, when to renew your gas certificate and your electric certificate and your EPC and whatever else. So Hammock actually gives you a document section where you can upload all your important documents. So you've got them all in one place and you can find them whenever you need them, but also you can set the expiry date. So Hammock's going to then start sending you reminders. And actually you can see at the top of the screen, I've got a reminder because one of my insurances is out of date. Hammock can also give you live property valuations, so online digital desktop valuations in about 3 clicks, so you can get an idea what your portfolio is worth, what your loan to value is, get some insights. I'll come back to the arrears because that's all, I'll finish there. But you can see what payments you may have coming up, so you kind of know what to look out for. You can also compare your rental yields, which is a really handy way of really starting to ask yourself, have you been putting the rent up correctly? In this case, has this tenant just been in there 10 years? And I've never changed the rent, which is why my yield is half what I'm getting down here. So lots of nice little insights, but the one that I want to focus on to finish is the arrears management, because we always get feedback from users who've just signed up and they love Hammock. They all quite often will tell us they found arrears they didn't even know about. So I'm going to click into this tenancy here for Robert, because the system is telling me he owes me £800. So if I come in here, you can see just how easy it is to create a tenancy. I've just said his name's Robert, lives at 27 Swallow Close, pays £14.50 every month, and we're starting from last April, the start of the tax year. So Hammock will build a rent table, and actually this one goes back 2 pages back to April, but always read these tables bottom up, by the way, but it will literally tell you for every due date exactly what was due, exactly what was received, and therefore whether your tenant has an outstanding balance. And you can see here, May, June, July, all fine. August is when the problem occurred, so they didn't pay the rent, fell behind. It looks like in September they did start paying again, but obviously didn't reduce their arrears. That started in October, so they overpaid in October by £250, so they brought it down. Overpaid again in December, brought it down again, but as it stands, they still owe £800. So I think, especially those who self-manage, this is so critical, because I know you always kind of assume your tenants are paying. I can't tell you how many times landlords have discovered that they weren't, or how, fat fingered something or missed a payment, etc. So I think that will be a really killer feature for you guys. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to take you through. I don't know, there may be some specific questions about the software, or you may just have more questions about MTD. So I'll stop sharing the screen, and if I need to reshare, I can do.
It's been, yeah, as you say, quite a lot. And Marco's been beavering away in the chat, answering quite a lot of them again. I mean, I must admit that I've got what I believe to be a very simple question. I feel like I've missed something here. But you had a property on the screen there that was managed by a letting agent, and therefore the gross rent was £1,200 per month, but actually minus 10%, it was £1,080. Now, how on earth does Hammock know that that payment is coming from a letting agent, and to deduct 10% from that?
Yeah, so when you add a tenancy, so I'll go in here, like if you click on the add tenancy button, first of all, you select your property, your start date and whatever, but it will ask you, do you use an agent? And if you say yes, it will go, okay, cool. Well, how much are your fees? And you can put that in as a fixed amount or a percentage, plus or minus VAT. So you actually create the tenancy before you start tracking. And if I show you the example, so it was Mary. So when we look at Mary's tenancy, it's slightly different to Robert's, the one I showed you a second ago, because that one didn't use an agent. So here we've got the tenant Mary. Mary's paying £1,200 a month. But then we've also got our letting agent moving on, who's taking their fee, in this case, £120. So because Hammock knows that, when I click on that transaction, I say it's rent for Mary, it goes, oh, cool, let me look at that tenancy. Okay, that's £1,200 a month minus the fee. So that's how it knows.
Oh, right. It does that for all payments moving forward. You just upload it once.
Yeah, but because the way payments work, especially with landlords, typically within the payment reference, it's the same every month. It will have maybe the name of the tenant, or the name of the agent, or the name of the property, or whatever. But because they're just regular and recurring, and the amount is as well, it just recognizes and does it for you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I thought there was going to be a simple answer to it.
But Ronnie, if you were wondering that, somebody else probably was. So I'm glad you asked.
Well, I think you'd be surprised, but you never know. Yeah, I mean, look, we've had a lot of questions coming in. I've been too concentrated on my own question to really go through these. Laura, have you been pick any of these up yet?
I think I'm in over my head.
That's the way to be on these lock-ins. It's not a good one if you're not in over your head. So I'm gonna try and work, I guess backwards for the time being. Kat's asked, and I think you mentioned kind of referenced this about multiple tenancies in the same property. So Kath has said, can the Hammock system be used for HMOs? In which case you can have 5 or 6 different tenants.
Yeah, absolutely it can. So when you add the property, there is a drop down to say whether it's an HMO, a furnished holiday let, etc. We are incredibly popular with HMO landlords for one reason. Well, for many reasons, but one particular one is that our pricing is based on the number of properties, not the number of tenancies. So actually a 5 tenant HMO in Hammock land is just one property. So yeah, it's really cost effective in that sense for HMO landlords. And actually, if you don't mind me picking up another question, which I noticed, because it's something I should have mentioned, but I didn't. Somebody was asking, can you use Hammock without open banking? Okay, so I'm going to jump back into the screen. So yeah, the short answer is yes, you absolutely can. I would, where possible, I would always recommend the bank feed because it's just easier and faster. But yeah, you can absolutely just use the upload button there, and then you can. So if you were to, for example, to go into your online banking, download your transactions as a spreadsheet, you can then upload them into Hammock, and you would basically create like a manual bank feed, and then you can every month or every quarter you can just do another upload into that feed. The problem, what you won't get with that is then you won't have those notifications every week, every month telling you, oh, the rent's come in, your mortgage has gone out, and your account won't be fully up to date. It will just be, it means you just every week or every month you're going to have to go in, download the transactions, upload. Whereas if you've got the bank feed connected, it's automated every day. The new transactions just come in and automatically categorize.
To upload these manual statements, would Hammock still be able to recognize where the rent's coming from, linking it to the tenant, or the rest of it?
So if you're uploading the transactions, you would still be uploading your bank transactions. You would just be uploading it as a spreadsheet rather than connecting your bank through open banking, if that makes sense.
So the features are the same otherwise,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
just not live. I understand your point of it being, it's always going to be, well, not going to get those notifications of when things come in because it doesn't know until you tell it.
Yeah, what would happen is you just say if you were doing an upload, maybe you hadn't uploaded your transactions for 2 months, you upload it, everything will just categorize that day. So you just get one notification with everything for the last 6 weeks essentially. And I say it's if that's where you prefer to do it, absolutely do it. Just from an admin perspective, it's just much easier once it's connected and then it's automated from there.
Pripal said, could you show the limited company add-on and the features for that and how it looks, please?
Ooh, yeah, somebody's doing my marketing job for me. To do that, I am actually going to have to log out of this account and log into a different one. So if you
Right.
give me 2 seconds, but yeah, essentially we do have an add-on package which is really aimed at landlords who own their properties in a limited company. And let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to share a different account. So this is a landlord called Mia. Mia just has one property and it's in a limited company. And the truth is, for the uninitiated, if I told you to tell me what was different about this account to the one I showed you before, I'd be amazed if anyone could tell me. But the difference is in Mike's account, under overview, it just said transactions and it took you straight into the bank feed. Once you have the add-on, you get this, it's now bookkeeping. And whilst you still have the transaction page, you get this additional area called journals and reports. And I'll take you in here. So first from here, you would select your entity. So in Mia's case, she only has one company called Property ABC. But if you did have multiple, you could choose which company you wanted to look at. You then choose your tax year. One quirk of limited companies, obviously, they don't tend to run in from 6th of April like self-assessment. So in this case, it's a company that runs 1st of July. And once we go in here, you now just get some additional reporting and functionality. All of this is still based off the transactions that we track in exactly the same way. But now I get my balance sheet. I get my trial balance. These may, by the way, may be reports that your accountant will use more than you, depending on how familiar you are with accounting. You get your profit and loss report. And like most reports, this can be filtered by portfolio or by property. You also you can also add new account codes in the chart of accounts. So what I mean by that is for self-assessment landlords, there's a relatively strict number of expenses that you can claim. So that we have them all in there, and when you click one, it will feed into the relevant box on the tax return. With a limited company, there's a much wider range of things that you might want to claim or need to claim. So with the limited company add-on, you can then add those new categories and track those transactions to those new categories. And again, maybe more for your accountants than for you, but you can also then post journals, end of year journals to move money between different account codes on your balance sheet. I'll say those. Sorry, go on.
Just going to say, one of the specific features that Pripal mentioned was regarding directed loan accounts. Is there anything you could show us there?
Yeah, so you don't need the add-on to track directors' loan payments. What you do need to have done, and by the way, I'm going to go back into Mike's account because it'll be easier to show you. Within the standard Hammock platform, the one I showed you to start with, you can still add portfolios that are owned by businesses. So you can still say that this business is in my personal name, this business is in my limited company, this property is owned 50-50 between my wife and me or whatever. You just don't get the balance sheet, the trial balance and the journals and stuff. But once you add a business portfolio, you can select, you can add the different directors of that portfolio. And then, actually, maybe this wasn't the best one to go into because this doesn't have a limited company portfolio. But then you can still click on a transaction, and director's loan is under the money category. So you can still mark something as a director's loan. You would then link it to your limited company portfolio, but I don't have one in here. And then it would say which director. And so you can actually link those amounts to specific directors, whether it's money in or money out. And then within our reporting section, which is just over here, there is a specific director's loan report, and that comes in our standard package. You don't need the add-on for that. I don't have any. If I did, this would show me all the directors and what their current balance was.
You said that is in the standard package, but it's also available in the limited company version as well.
So yeah, so you get this in both. This comes in to tracking directors' loans comes in our standard package. It's really just the main things for the limited company add-on is the things you need to kind of do your final accounts, which is your balance sheet and your trial balance. Like that is ultimately the report that your accountants will use to file. So anyone who's on here who's currently just using a spreadsheet, you'll send that spreadsheet to your accountant. Your accountant will do a load of work on that, and they will turn it into a balance sheet and a trial balance. Whereas in Hammock, it will just do it for you with the add-on.
Makes sense, thank you. I'm going to ask a question that has kind of been asked by Laura, who's messaged me on Teams separately, but also something I was thinking myself. James, you're making it look very, very easy here, flicking around because you've been using the system for a long time. But with members that are new to this, I would suspect that there's a reasonably steep learning curve. So what's the onboarding process? Is there something we can do outside of it, or is it something that you do already?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I wouldn't say it's really steep, but obviously everyone's got different levels of confidence with software, and I totally get that. So to start with, when you first sign up to Hammock, you don't actually land straight into this dashboard. It takes you through some pretty easy first steps. So add your first property, add your first tenancy, connect your bank, track your first rent. So it kind of guides you through that process. Once you get onto the platform, though, that's when you're free to click around and do all the things I've sort of shown you. But if you're a bit unsure, the first place I would go is down here to the help section. because as soon as you click on that, it opens up all our how-to videos. And it actually will always land on the getting started page, which is really the first 7 things that you might want to do, whether it's add a property, connect your bank, track rent, add a new ownership or ownership structure. But then beyond that, if you've got questions about bookkeeping, you can go in here and you can see there's all kinds of videos. They're all generally about 1-2 minutes long, and you can almost always find the question you're looking for because there are a lot. On top of that, we've got live chat. So you can come in here, click into the live chat and ask a question. The way our live chat works, it's really clever. So it will look at what you've said and it will first try and suggest the correct video, because usually based on your question, we know which video you want. But if that doesn't help you, it will then go through to a human. So it will say, has your question been answered? No. And it'll put you through. So they're the first ports of call. Finally, we also do weekly live training webinars that any landlords can join, and you can join them as many times as you like. We've had people who have joined them multiple times. Once you register, you'll get an email. It will have that link in there. So if you do have questions, or you could just come through on live chat and say, hey, how do I book onto the webinar? We run them multiple times a week, and when you click on the link, you can choose whichever one you want from like the next month. So there's always lots of choice.
They're live webinars, are they?
Live webinars, and you can, they'll take you through some of the basics, but then you'll have a chance to ask questions and things like that.
Thank you. To a very different subject now. Well, same subject, but very different question, I should say. John has mentioned that he's got a small amount of holiday rental income that's coming in from Spain. Is that trackable, and how would that work?
Yeah, so Hammock only works in pound sterling, so GBP. So Hammock doesn't really care where your property is, but it cares what currency your transactions are in. So if you can download those transactions, convert them into pounds in a spreadsheet, and then upload it into Hammock, you can absolutely do that. But you wouldn't be able to connect a foreign bank account and do it in euros, for example.
Fine. So that would have to be the manual upload that you were talking about earlier on.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Rob's mentioned something I'd noticed as well, which is your transactions here seem to be attached to individual properties. Now you've got the things of, landlord association, which you happen to land on right there. It's a brilliant example. Now let's say an LMPG membership, for instance. Now that's not linked to any individual property, but is linked to the entire portfolio. So in our case, members can use it on any property that they own. So that might be in joint ownership, it might be in single ownership. How would you best to track that?
So I think I'm sharing my screen here. Hopefully I am. So yeah, so here I clicked on landlord association. I've categorized it as membership fee. By default, you are right. It does ask you to link to property, but you can absolutely switch across and do it on a portfolio level instead. So I could say that's for my joint ownership portfolio and save it like that. And you'll notice when it's a portfolio, it's in purple. And when it's in a property, it's in black. Either way, it still knows where to send it through for your tax, because the joint ownership is split 50-50, Mike and Mary. So 50% that's going into Mike's tax return, 50% is going into Mary's.
There's a potential gold star on offer with this next question, because I will be shocked if you know this, or if indeed Marco knows this off the top of your head, which is there's a bit of an argument in the chat at the minute about whether or not Virgin Money works with Hammock in terms of open banking, because Paul's saying that he's got a few accounts with Virgin Money and he's using open banking, but there are who was it? Alistair and I think someone else had mentioned that it just doesn't seem to work at all, can't access open banking, therefore cannot use Hammock in that way. Do you know whether that's possible?
I'll have a stab, and Marco will correct me if I'm wrong. But so Virgin Money is an interesting one, because I believe what happened with Virgin Money is they acquired a few other banks, I think Yorkshire Bank and a couple of others. So some Virgin accounts have like an 8-digit account number and some have a 6-digit account number. And one of them, I think, works in Hammock, and the other one, I think they're still trying to get them connected on the open banking network. So that might be why some people are saying it works, some people are saying it doesn't, because some have one of the acquired banks and some have an original Virgin. Is that correct, Marco?
Yeah, but and also, Virgin Money got acquired recently, so there will be other changes on the horizon. So yeah, there are some complications in this. The reality about open banking per se is that we don't do the connections with the banks ourselves. We rely on other suppliers, and there are sometimes hiccups with the process. It's a little bit difficult to give a blanket answer just because I saw that someone else is asking about coverage as well. We do have on our help center, we have an FAQ dedicated to this with the links to the full list of all the banks that our suppliers tell us are available. My suggestion is if you try and for whatever reason it doesn't work, do check in with us, because sometimes there are just instances of the wrong stuff that got ticked or not ticked, etc. But it's a little bit difficult to give you blanket answers on this because things do change.
Actually, one little Hammock hack for anyone who is gonna give it a go now. We do get people who'll go, "Oh, I'm trying to connect my Barclays account and it doesn't work." For some banks, there are different connections for personal, for business, for corporate. So when you go and do search, and make sure you are clicking on the correct thing. So if you've got a personal account, click on Barclays Personal. If you've got a business account, click on Business.
Okay, well that might answer the question actually. That if some people can do it, some people can't. It might just be down to something as simple as that. Marco, you've kind of had a conversation in the chat already, so it's less a question here. But Rob mentioned a situation where rental income equals a portion of his partner's income, and self-employed work is also another portion, which actually, because they're both valid for making tax digital, would both need to be obviously tracked and all the rest of it. So is that something that Hammock are looking into, understanding and incorporating rental income and non-rental income into the platform?
So thank you for this question, first of all, especially because I actually don't think that we have expanded on it enough. I don't, James, if you already got into this, please forgive me, just I was dealing with the chat. So I was listening with one ear. I think one important part about this question is that in Hammock, you will be able to manage your own your portion of the rental income and your wife's rental income all in one account. So that's one thing that I don't know if we covered very well, but it is worth noting. When you have a joint ownership, you can manage both, or however many people are involved, all through one licensing Hammock. About the self-employment part, it's a little bit of a long conversation. So the short of it is that I have no timeline that I could share with anyone. The point is, when it was even on my slides, when we say made by landlords for landlords, it's been, and James was saying we started this before MTD was even on the horizon. We've always set up to really cover very specific. So what we do, instead of going generic, we are super laser focused on stuff that's needed for property, and our mantra is that we do that very, very well and exhaustively. Starting to look into any other income, etc., it means that there are, so you've seen our platform, like if you're trying to manage self-employment with gardening as an expense, it may or may not work. So we tend to go pretty deep under the skin of our user, so that it would be a serious undertaking. So the short of it is, what I can tell you is that as of today, we are 1000% focused on landlords, and that's what we do. As soon as anything changes, everyone will be the first to know. Like, we will be shouting from the rooftops.
Well, look, one thing that you should be shouting from the rooftops about, well, two things you should be shouting from the rooftops about, from these questions here. I've got a couple of people saying, how do they find out about the weekly webinars that you do and that they didn't know that they existed? But whereabouts are they on the platform?
They're not on the platform. Oh, so Marco, I think you were
Oh, go on.
yeah, they're not on the platform itself. So if you get emails on your sign up journey, they will be listed in there. There'll be links there. But if anyone, if we, I'm sure we have some Hammock users on this call, and if they're asking for a little refresher or just want to join, the best thing to do, I would say, is either email hello@usehammock.com and just say, hey, can I have the link for the webinars, or go onto live chat on your account and just ask that same question, and somebody will send you the link.
Mm. Okay. Final thing is price, because Marky, you mentioned earlier on that LMPG members, of course, get a quite a hefty discount, 50% off. But that's 50% off what? What's the cost for this?
James, do you want to take this or should I?
Yes, yeah. So so LMPG members actually get an amazing deal. That you get 50% off the prices that we had before we recently put our prices up. So it's actually even cheaper than 50% of the website. So for a 1 to 3 property landlord, so it is based on the number of properties you have in your account. Doesn't matter if it's husband and wife, how many bank accounts, just number of properties. If you have between 1 and 3 properties in your account, it would be normally £5.99 a month plus VAT. You get it for half that, so £2.99 a month plus VAT. If you're in the 4 to 10 property bracket, would usually be £11.99 a month plus VAT. You get it for £5.99 a month plus VAT. If you're in the 11 to 20 property bracket, it would usually be £19.99 a month plus VAT, but you're getting it for £9.99 plus VAT. And anyone who's got more than 20 properties, it's priced per property. So it just become, I won't go into it's with the discount, it's 65p per property, I believe.
But it's always been like that. I thought it was always used to be paid per property. Are the bands a new thing?
No, the bands have always been there. So it's the one you'll be in one of those bands, and then that is the price you pay. So if you've got 5 properties and you add a sixth, it won't make any difference. If you've got 10 and you add an 11th, you'll jump into the next tier.
I've
Wow.
added in the chat. Our pricing is public, so it's always available at the URL that I posted there. So you can check. You can check. There's a calculator there, so you can check on based on the number of properties you've got. As James was saying, bear in mind that your LMPG discount is even steeper than that. So have a look at the main price and then sign up through with your LMPG membership. Let us know that you are an LMPG member. So the way this works is that you sign up, you add a payment method, and for 30 days you don't pay anything. You have a free trial. During those 30 days, let us know that you are an LMPG member. We'll check on your membership number, and we will add the discount so you get 50% off that before you get billed.
Yeah, lovely. Look, I think that's all. I've tried to cover as many questions as possible, but it has been difficult tonight because they have come through really, really quickly. And I'll be honest, a bit like Laura, they're a little bit complicated at times. But it's been great to see you guys again and learn a little bit more. Every time I see you, I must have seen this platform a few, 5, 6, 7 different times now. I always feel like there's a little bit more to it, and it's interesting because it doesn't look overly complicated, but then you can really drill down into it to quite some depth, really.
Yeah, I
Very
mean,
much.
yeah, thank you so much. Say it's simple by design. So we could have added 100 more features into here. We haven't by choice because we want it to be simple. We want to focus on like the important things. But I say, look, MGD's coming. That's definitely a reason to use Hammock. But honestly, I mean, just look at our Trustpilot reviews and you'll see that landlords just love using the software, whether it's MTD or not. So I'd say you get a 30-day free trial, you get 50% off. Give it a go.
Can I just say for everyone's benefit, because to Anthony's point, it is fairly specialized stuff that we've been talking about with tax. Laura was looking out for you guys. She triple checked with me that we were actually able to deal with questions about MTD in general. So I hope we passed the test. But yes, we've been screened before. We haven't been just thrown into the deep end. So hopefully we did okay.
It's for you to answer, really, isn't it? Have they passed the test?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
God, that was
very
it.
nice
Got a
to
little bit
hear.
nervous there, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a bit of suspense. Yes. Also, again, Laura and Anthony both very kindly. Sometimes for whatever reason my notifications don't work properly. But if you post in Facebook on the Facebook group, I will come and reply. So if you have any other questions, we got many LMPG members who are users, so maybe they can help you directly. If not, it doesn't just stay there. Like we will interact with it. So hello@usehammock.com or the chat. Give us a phone call. Use the live chat. Whatever you need. We are around, and we love talking about properties and everything about them.
Thank you. Laura, that's Hammock out the way. What have we got next month?
Oh, put me on the spot now.
I only ask this every month, don't I? So
Roma.
Roma
Roma.
Finance.
Roma. Yeah.
Have we?
I hope so now.
Oh, I hope so as well.
If not, we'll have to get up.
I didn't even know we'd organised one with them. No, brilliant. Yeah, I like those guys. I look forward to that. Okay.
Big shoes to fill. Big shoes to fill.
Definitely. I wouldn't want to be following this one. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us tonight. If anyone does have any further questions or anything else, do let me know and I can pop them over to the guys over at Hammock following this. Otherwise, as Marco says, they're only ever a phone call away or a Facebook group post away. To be honest, he's on there quite often. And if he doesn't answer quick enough, we'll tag him and poke him and phone him and all the rest of it. So I hope to see you all next month for Roma. If you do need to speak to us in the meantime, again, we're only a phone call away. Don't be a stranger. All the best. Good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.